Statline Scouting, folks, we have been here before. I am putting on my hard hat. I am grabbing my pickaxe. I am going into the mines, hoping to unearth some underrated prospect gems. Where we stand right now, late in the 2024 season, is this is the fourth year that I've done this. This is the second time I've done this year. Rookie ball and complex ball are over, and full season ball is almost over, so it's time to take a look at the minor leagues. Let's talk about some prospects who are flying under the radar. I like to start in AAA and work my way down the minor league ladder, and the tool that we primarily use when we're statline scouting is, of course, the Fangraphs minor league leaderboards. These are great leaderboards, not just because you can look at any league or any level that you want, but because you can apply filters, right? So, for example, we're here in AAA's International League. We're sorting by WRC+, but we also have set, hey, how about a minimum of 200 plate appearances? How about age 24 or younger? You know, like good prospect ages, right? That's no disrespect to the, 26 and 27-year-olds still grinding out great seasons in AAA, but we're looking at kind of the younger guys at that level, and we're seeing James Wood pop up, and we're seeing Jackson Holliday pop up. As we scroll down a little bit further, we find Toronto Blue Jays outfielder Alan Roden. Alan Roden is a guy whose name I've seen just continue to pop up for me whenever I look at minor league leaderboards, not just this year, but also last year. This is just a guy who, no matter what level he's at, he seems to hit. Let's talk about Alan Roden. Statline Scouting is about trying to find a story in the stats, and I would say the story of Alan Roden is basically this guy hits. This guy runs low strikeout rates, he runs high walk rates, so he's very disciplined. You're seeing at most of the levels here close to a 1-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio, which is very impressive. I think one thing the Blue Jays probably want him working on is they would like to see a little more power. We're talking about, 14 home runs here and about 470 plate appearances. That's not terrible. But, for a corner outfielder like Alan Roden, you would hope for a little bit more power, a little more raw pop. Not that this is terrible, but you can see, just look at the WRC Plus, like 150 in high A, 147 in double A last year, 132 in both double A and triple A this year. The guy just keeps hitting. And because he keeps hitting, Steamer, which is, one of the more simple projection systems on Fangraphs, has him rated at a 105 WRC plus as a big leaguer. They say if he gets called up, he would be a above average hitter in Major League Baseball already, even though he doesn't have any data for Major League Baseball. That's pretty impressive. And that struck me last year. This is a tweet I sent out in November. This was top Steamer WRC plus projections for hitters yet to make their MLB debut. And this was back in, at the end of 2023. So Langford, Manzardo, Holliday, JHM. And then Alan Roden was up there, and that was the first time I really started paying attention to Alan Roden. I was very impressed with that. I was very impressed with the fact that already a projection system like Steamer could project him to have an above average WRC plus, according to the league. Again, just good strikeout rates, good walk rates here. I think what's tricky for Alan Roden, you got to keep in mind, is he's a Toronto Blue Jay, and if you look at particularly their trade deadline, they brought in Lo Perfido, they brought in Will Wagner, they trade for Jonathan Clase, and so they have a lot of these guys who are either lefties or switch hitters, and, he could definitely get lost in that fold. Even Addison Barger, who's back up in the big leagues now, he could definitely get lost in that position player shuffle, especially among lefties. So I'm not sure if he will make it necessarily with the Blue Jays. He could be a trade candidate this offseason. But yeah, he's a name worth knowing, I think. And one thing I like is that he was a 2022 third rounder out of Creighton. Creighton are, of course, the Blue Jays. We like to supplement our Statline Scouting with a visit to MLB Pipeline. These are the top 30 Blue Jays prospects ranked by them. And I don't choose Pipeline because it's necessarily the best coverage or because it's the most up-to-date. In fact, a lot of times it's a little bit out of date. They will add new draftees. If a player trades teams, they will, try to rank them accordingly within their new system. But there's not as much movement in these leaderboards as there necessarily should be for players who, have been in the organization all year. And it's kind of good to look back and see, hey, who has gone up in stock? Because Alan Roden, again, another good year in the upper minors, but currently ranked, according to MLB Pipeline, as the 13th best prospect in the Blue Jays system. Unless you're a Blue Jays fan or a real prospect head, you might not know a lot about Alan Roden, but Kumar Rocker is definitely a name you know. He, of course, starred at Vanderbilt alongside Jack Leiter. Those two were two of the more exciting college pitchers we've seen in recent years. And you probably know the story as well. He was drafted 10th overall by the Mets in 2021, didn't sign. There was concerns about the physical. He goes and plays indie ball for the year after that and ends up drafted 3rd overall in 2022 by the Rangers. Maybe those injury concerns raised by the Mets turned out to be true. He had Tommy John in early 2023. Well, he is back, and he is back with an absolute vengeance. Look at what Kumar Rocker has done. He has, 8 starts this year. He started in the Complex League, but they've quickly moved him up through AA, and he's now currently at AAA. And these stats throughout the season are unbelievable. He struck out 40% of the batters he faced in AA with only a 4% walk rate. Just unbelievable ratios all across. Look at these strikeout per 9 and walk per 9 and home run per 9. Like, he has been basically perfect so far. He had a .93 FIP in AA in 5 starts. So Kumar Rocker, who is someone who you may have lost track of, who's maybe, a little bit post-hype now. He's just sort of showing, hey, I'm still very much relevant in the prospect world. And I think he probably would have been called up if not for the Rangers' just general position. They're not, super in the playoff race right now. I think he could have been a September call-up, but now, no need to call him up, no need to use a spot on the 40-man for him just yet. But a very relevant prospect. Kumar Rocker has become relevant here late in 2024, and it's just sort of time, I think, that baseball fans become reacquainted with how great and how exciting he can be when his stuff is working and he's healthy. I will give MLB Pipeline some credit here. We are on their top 100 right now. Junior Caminero currently ranked as their best prospect. But if we scroll down here, you do see that Kumar Rocker has indeed broken through to the top 100. He's their current 97th ranked prospect overall. So not exactly the type of prospect I normally look at in this series, right? I'm looking for, names that are less familiar to the average baseball fan or, lower down in terms of the prospect rankings. But this is just a public service announcement. I guess that's how I could put it. Kumar Rocker is back. Kumar Rocker is relevant. I do want to quickly give a shout out to SeatGeek. We're close to the end of the Major League Baseball season. So a lot of these teams are in some tight playoff races. My Braves are in a playoff race. Let's say I wanted to go see my Braves in a playoff race. Oh, they're playing the Blue Jays. It's a Sunday afternoon game. I'm sure it's going to be great weather. September in Atlanta. I mean, it's starting to feel good around here. It's starting to not feel like I'm sweating from my back every single minute. Let's say I wanted to pay let's go $50 for a ticket, and let's include the fees too, because they're a bunch of liars. You guys are a bunch of liars. I want my kid's Michael Harris II Velcro wallet. I will be one of the first 3,000 kids. What I like to do is I like to sort by deal score. It'll rate these seats on a score of 1 to 10 based on the location and the price. Oh, this is great. Section 214 for $24 each, and that's including the fees. That is a lovely view of Truist Park, although honestly not a bad seat in the house there. And at checkout, you can get a discount even further, $20 off your first order. Code FOOLISH, FOOLISH. You should know how to spell it, but code FOOLISH at checkout. SeatGeek, thank you. We're moving down the ladder. We're moving down to AA. We're looking at the Eastern League right now. We're looking at players age 21 or younger. So these players are quite young to be playing at the AA level. And if we sort by WRC+, we see Roman Anthony and Marcelo Meyer first and foremost. Those are two of the absolute top prospects in baseball, both Boston Red Sox. Red Sox fans are very excited about them, as you can imagine, alongside some others like Kyle Teal, for example. And then in fourth, we see Samuel Basallo, who's this great catcher prospect for the Orioles, one of the top prospects in baseball as well. Who is sandwiched between them, though? None other than Hao-Yu Lee of the Detroit Tigers. Let's talk about Hao-Yu Lee, because even if we just compare him to Marcelo Meyer, the offensive stats are very similar. It's a very similar slash line. They both can steal some bases, similar strikeout rates and walk rates. Meyer, again, one of the top prospects in Major League Baseball. Let's talk about Hao-Yu Lee. Hao-Yu Lee is a second baseman. He will be 22 next February, and he originally signed with the Philadelphia Phillies out of Taiwan. As you can see, if we look at his minor league stats here, Philadelphia, 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 until 2023. He was traded as part of that Michael Lorenzen trade. He was the return for the Tigers when they traded away Michael Lorenzen to the Phillies. Remember that? He almost immediately threw a no-hitter for them. Hao-Yu Lee was the return in that deal. And this is a guy who had hit pretty well in the Phillies system, but has been extremely impressive in the Tigers system this year. As you can see, 87 games in Double-A. It's a very balanced hitting profile. It's not like the strikeout rate is too high or the walk rate is too low or anything like that. 12 home runs and 16 for 17 on the steals as well. I'm impressed by Hao-Yu Lee. It's unfortunate here. He does seem to have spine inflammation. He has a back injury. So even though there's a few games left in the full season A-ball season, I'm not sure if he'll be totally back, but if his season is indeed over, it's been a very good year for Hao-Yu Lee. We're here looking at the top 30 Tigers prospects according to MLB Pipeline. This is a sneaky good system. I don't know if it's really actually all that sneaky, but I'm just going to say I think this is a pretty good system. Hao-Yu Lee is ranked 8th within that system. We will look at some guys who are more under the radar than he is, but just a name that has continued to impress me this year. A good season at the Double-A level. We are now looking at pitchers in minor league baseball in terms of volume, which is something that's really easy to forget, but you know, these teams spend years building up these pitchers in the hopes that they will be able to one day join the big league rotation and make, 30 starts a year, and that's not always a given where everyone's at, right? You think about how many great young pitchers there are who aren't able to make 30 starts a year or pitch as deep into the games as they should be because they simply haven't been built up and accustomed to that volume. So these are pitchers 23 and younger, so these are young pitchers in the minor leagues, simply sorted by innings pitched. And one guy whose name does stand out to me is Lucas Braun of the Atlanta Braves. Not only has he thrown over 130 innings in minor league baseball this year, he's thrown 130 good innings split between high A and now Double A. Lucas Braun was the Braves' 2023 sixth-round pick, the 189th overall pick in the draft last year, and again, over 130 innings pitched in his first full professional season. That's pretty impressive. I will point out, though, he was a senior sign for the Braves, so he had already pitched, 4 years in college baseball. I think he threw 90-plus innings in his final year at Cal State Northridge last time I looked at it. So Lucas Braun, he's built up, he's ready to start, he's ready to go, and that's important because teams, and I think the Braves are a good example of this, teams are really utilizing young, optionable starting pitching guys they can keep around the upper minors, they can call them up, they can make a few starts, they can slot into the rotation, but you need to have a certain amount of innings build up and, just being able to pitch on, 5-6 days rest consistently. And Lucas Braun has demonstrated that he's able to do that, over 130 innings pitched. And again, these are pretty good innings as well. You can see in high A, had a 4.34 ERA and a 3.40 FIP. And the ERA and FIP in Double A now are both below 3. These are good ratios overall. We're looking at 27, 26% strikeout rates, low walk rates as well. This is a pretty impressive season from Lucas Braun, and it's a good fit for him, right? The Braves have had a lot of success, in terms of drafting pitching recently, and he just seems to be another example, and that he's definitely going to be utilized. And I mean, to further reiterate the point, look at this Braves system right now, according to MLB Pipeline. It is dominated by pitchers who they have drafted recently. We have to scroll a bit to get to Lucas Braun, who is ranked as the 21st overall Braves prospect, according to MLB Pipeline. We're going to go from a current Braves prospect to a former Braves prospect. This is Sabin Ceballos. He was the 2023 third rounder for the Braves, so the same draft as Lucas Braun. He is a third baseman, and he was traded from the Braves organization to the Giants at this past trade deadline for Jorge Soler. And the thing about the Soler trade is, he signed a contract, so presumably that was at market value, so presumably he had not a lot of trade value in either direction, right? It was a pretty neutral proposition. He goes out, he plays the first half of the 2024 season, doesn't really show that he's any better or any worse than the contract he signed, and so when you make a trade like that for someone like Soler and the Braves are taking on, that contract, you're expecting pretty much nothing in return, right? It should be a pretty neutral trade. After all, the free market has already decided what Jorge Soler is worth, and that presumably hasn't changed much over the past few months. The Giants, the main return here was indeed Sabin Ceballos, and he's been impressive for them. He in 2024 in high A for the Braves, he had a 109 WRC plus, a 706 OPS. With the Giants now, and again, this is a small sample. We are reacting to a small sample. An 880 OPS. He hit 3 home runs in 84 games, in the Braves organization, 5 in 28 in the Giants organization. And if we scroll down here, we're going to get a little bit more into the weeds here. If you look at some of the batted ball data, you can see how he has been able to hit more home runs as a Giant than as a Brave already. Look at these ground ball rates. It was 40% with the Braves, 27% with the Giants. Look at these fly ball rates. It's 36% with the Braves, 46% with the Giants. But not just that. Look at the infield fly ball rate. So this just looks at, infield fly balls with fly balls as the, denominator. And, so he's not just hitting fly balls. He's not just hitting balls in the air. It's not like he's hitting, a bunch of infield pop-ups either with the Giants, whereas that was a problem with the Braves when he would get under the ball. So, and pulling maybe even just slightly more, although I would say that's pretty negligible at this point. But he is getting the ball in the air more, and that has led to more home runs. That has led to more power. That has led to a better overall looking offensive profile. And that's exciting for Sabin Ceballos, and that's exciting for the San Francisco Giants, who seem to have maybe pulled off a pretty good prospect in this trade after all. Looking at the top 30 Giants prospects according to Pipeline, we can scroll down this list, but as we get to the end here, Sabin Ceballos, not yet on the top 30. I imagine he'll be on there when this list fully updates next year. There's nothing wrong at looking at a hitter's WRC plus or a pitcher's FIP or ERA, but sometimes I like to get a little more into the details. What are the things that are generating a good ERA or a good WRC plus? And a good formula is get guys to ground out, get guys to hit ground balls, and then get whiffs. So we're looking at pitchers here with a 50% or higher ground ball rate and a 15% or higher swinging strike rate. Whiffs and ground balls, if you do this, you're never really gonna be bad. And so we're looking at these pitchers here, and I've actually got it sorted by age because we're looking for some young players here, and you'll see it's mostly young players doing this, and that's because whiffs and ground balls are both more common in the lower levels of the minors to begin with, right? These are hitters who haven't necessarily learned how to make a ton of contact or hit the ball at the most ideal launch angles. But one name that does stand out as someone who's not, playing in rookie ball, for example, right now, is a pitcher in the Boston Red Sox organization by the name of Juan Valera. Juan Valera is not just young, he is extremely young for someone finishing out the season in full season A-ball. He is 18, he will be 19, not until next May. Wow. Had a really nice go at it in the complex league. This is sort of the second lowest tier in the minor league ladder. This is stateside rookie ball, essentially, I believe, because it's Boston, and that would be in Florida. This would be the Florida Complex League. Good outing there, 1.79 ERA, didn't allow a home run. These ratios and strikeouts and walks are fine, but again, he was young. He was young for that level. And then what do they do at the end of the season? They bump him up to A. They say, how are things going to go in A for you? And he does a lot more of the same. Doesn't allow a home run, 20 innings pitched, a 1.33 ERA. The walks go up, but the strikeouts go up as well. And I'm very impressed by a 30% strikeout rate from an 18-year-old in full season A-ball, even if it's only 20 innings pitched. That is very impressive. And the ground ball rate as well, right? The ground balls are important here. We're talking about a 30% strikeout rate, 63% walk rate in 6 games at the full season A-ball level from an 18-year-old. That is very impressive stuff from Juan Valera. Now, it's funny, if you go up here, a lot of times Fangraphs will have, here's how he showed up in our prospect rankings, or here's how we mentioned him in an article. There is no information to be found about this Juan Valera, so I have consulted some other sources. I found this article from a few days ago on bloggingtheredsox.com. The author is Brendan Campbell. Red Sox pitching prospect Juan Valera named Florida Complex League All-Star. That's awesome for him, not to mention the fact that, once again, he finished the season in full season A-ball. But the pertinent information here, as provided to me by Mr. Brendan Campbell, is Valera, who turned 18 in May, originally signed with the Red Sox for only $45,000. That's not a very high signing bonus for an international free agent coming out of the Dominican Republic in April 2023. So very impressive stuff, and very impressive stuff from the Red Sox organization. We've gotten a really impressive minor league season from a player that didn't require much of an initial investment. Here are your top 30 Red Sox prospects according to MLB Pipeline. I think this is by far the best minor league system in baseball right now. Really, at this moment, one of the better minor league systems I've ever seen, period. I really do think that. This is a really strong system, top to bottom. And because of that, Juan Valera not on this list, although I would certainly hope to see him once there's a full update next year. Back on the Fangraphs minor league leaderboards here. This time we're taking a look at the California League full season A-ball. And as I sort by WRC+, you can see in this column the ages of the players mentioned. So, it's good to be young in this situation. And Lazaro Montes, who is a guy we scouted last year who is turning into an absolute offensive beast, is on this list. But just ahead of him in terms of WRC+, is another player in his age 19 season in full season A-ball. That is a player for the Arizona Diamondbacks known as Demetrio Crisantes. So let's take a look at Demetrio. Demetrio Crisantes, I hope I'm saying that name right, has just turned 20 years old. Happy birthday, Demetrio Crisantes, but this is his age 19 season because of how the age cutoffs work. And what impresses me, first and foremost, is he just seems to have gotten a little bit better, right? So in the Complex League last year, 2023, his pro debut coming off of being a 2022 7th round draft pick by the Diamondbacks, 126 WRC+. This year, he opens in the Complex League at 141 and then gets the bump up to full season A-ball. And this is a really tough transition to make. That jump from, rookie ball level to full season A-ball, that is really difficult to do, especially at a young age. It is one of the harder jumps to make at all in any minor league system. And boy, has he been impressive. The strikeout and the walk rates are about even. 6 home runs and 18 steals in 59 games. That is just awesome to see from Demetrio Crisantes, who is listed as a second baseman. Looking here at the Diamondbacks' top prospects, Crisantes comes in at 13th, sandwiched between two former Statline Scouting alums in Christian Mena and Adrian Del Castillo. Crisantes, if you look at some of the more newly updated public-facing prospect lists, like, say, for example, Baseball America, he is starting to show up on the back ends of some of those top 100. So chances are when, every publication starts to put together their top 100 lists, he will either be on those lists or at least under consideration for those authors. So I will say he's not totally under the radar necessarily. If you are a prospect head, this is probably a player you are familiar with. But yeah, just a really impressive season that has put him on the radar for a lot of prospect people. Now it is time for my annual rookie ball disclaimer. These are kids. These are a bunch of kids. They are young. The stats are crazy. This is often their first pro season. The pitchers can't throw strikes. The batters can't make consistent contact. The fielders can't field, at least based on, major league standards, right? And the best 17-year-olds are often not the best 21-year-olds, and the best 21-year-olds are often not the best 25-year-olds. Development is non-linear. These guys are a long way away from being impact players in Major League Baseball, but we're still going to take a look for fun. So we are starting at the complex level. This is stateside rookie ball. This is a little bit more advanced than the rookie ball you'll see played in the Dominican. We'll get to a couple of those players later. We're looking at pitchers right now, and we're looking at pitchers age 18 or younger. So again, these are incredibly young players we're looking at. And if we sort by FIP at the complex level, the best pitcher by FIP is David Matoma, who is a right-handed pitcher in the Pittsburgh Pirates organization. This guy has an absolutely fascinating story. I can't wait to share it with you all. Let's talk about David Matoma. David Matoma is from Africa, specifically Uganda. And that is so exciting. It's so exciting to be talking about a player from that area of the world. And the Pirates, I will point out, are the team that debuted the first continental African a few years ago in Major League Baseball. That was Gift Ngope, who is from South Africa. David Matoma, not from South Africa, but from Uganda. And, Ugandan baseball has gotten a little bit of buzz online. You might have followed, Dennis Kazumba on Instagram at some point. He's another Ugandan baseball player chasing the dream of playing, a professional baseball or affiliated baseball. David Matoma is playing affiliated baseball right now. He signed with the Pittsburgh Pirates, had a good first pro season, but this year, pitching in the complex level, 15 games he's appeared in, 22 innings pitched, and it's just some great ratios, some great numbers across the board for him. A 30% strikeout rate and a 10% walk rate at age 18 at the complex level. Absolutely plays. This is a guy who has pitched 38 professional innings between the ages of 17 and 18. He has allowed 2 earned runs. That is crazy impressive to think about for any pitcher to do, much less one from Uganda, which does not necessarily have an established talent pipeline of Major League Baseball just yet, although certainly there is a team or two working on that. The obvious question is, how does a country like Uganda produce a baseball talent like that, right? Baseball is a skill sport. It's not something you can necessarily pick up when you're 17 or 18 years old and dominate. Even though you might be a really great athlete, you have to have played it from a pretty young age for the most part. And that answer comes courtesy of a Twitter friend of mine, Pat Ellington, who earlier in 2024, this is on the True Blue LA, that's the SB Nation Dodgers blog, writes about what he describes as one of baseball's last frontiers, that is baseball in continental Africa. The Dodgers have an academy in Uganda, and that is where the Pirates signed him out of. So really, so far, and Pat, in fact, points this out in the article, it's the Dodgers and the Pirates who have shown the greatest commitment to signing and developing African baseball players, as he puts it. And Matoma is next in that line. Of course, the Dodgers have, as we just mentioned, their academy. The Pirates had Gift and Gope. So those are the two teams with the dedication for that. And it's just really exciting. It's really exciting to see the game grow more global. And as Pat points out in his article, how amazing would it be if by the 2030s or the 2040s you've got a team from Uganda or maybe some other country in Africa represented in the World Baseball Classic? That's just awesome to see, and to see baseball become more and more globalized is great, especially ahead of the 2028 Summer Olympics. Which will be another opportunity for baseball to gain, access to places where otherwise it might not be, right? Because, when you see a prospect come up, you're like, especially an international one, you're like, oh, cool, he's from Dominican, he's from Venezuela. Those countries have the resources, they have the pipelines to produce major league talent consistently. We don't necessarily know that about Uganda, and that's why it's really exciting. That's why I will be certainly rooting on David Matoma. Here are your top 30 Pirates prospects. David Matoma not on there just yet. But, again, this was the team that debuted Gift and Gope as the first continental African. And as exciting that was, and as much of a watershed moment that was, it would also be really cool to see a continental African have a really sustained run in the big leagues. And I think maybe David Matoma is the best bet for that for now. That is very exciting. Imagine, a lot of times it just takes one, right? If David Matoma, becomes a relevant big leaguer for the Pirates, think of what that does for the next generation. The same way he was probably inspired by Ngope, even though they're not necessarily from the same country, they are from the same continent after all. You can't walk your way off the island. That is a very famous baseball quote that applies to rookie ball in the Dominican Republic. The idea here is, there are a lot of guys who will show up and they'll have a 30% walk rate at this level because the pitchers can't throw strikes, and they'll have an awesome on-base percentage, but that's not necessarily what the scouts are looking for at this level. They want to see young players show off their tools, right? They want to see home runs, they want to see stolen bases, and so the players feel some pressure to deliver on that. And so I'm looking at a player who hit home runs and stole bases. That's going to be my strategy here. That player is Emil Morales of the Los Angeles Dodgers. He led the Dominican Summer League this year with 14 home runs. Next best had 11. And then he also stole 12 bases. Some of these guys stole, oh my goodness, 46 bases in 38 games for this guy. Goodness gracious. But 14 home runs, 12 stolen bases. Let's talk Emil Morales. He is listed as a shortstop. That maybe doesn't mean that much right now at age 17. I mean, just about every position player in Major League Baseball played shortstop at some point as they were developing as a player. But still, that's exciting. Maybe that means even if he has to change positions, he could still be a plus defender somewhere else. Or he sticks at shortstop, in which case he's insanely valuable, right? At 6'3", 191, that is sort of the ideal shortstop build, right? That is what in 2024 a shortstop looks like. He could put on some weight and maybe he moves over to third base or something like that. I don't know, but still good to be a shortstop right now. Tells me he's probably really athletic. Emil Morales, we can see the numbers right here. It was still a 20% walk rate. I know I talked about that. You can't walk your way off the island quote, but that's the thing. The guys just can't throw strikes, so it's really hard to determine, even if you have the ability to, swing at strikes and not swing at balls, as you move your way up the minor league ladder, you're going to run into pitchers who can throw strikes, and if you don't have, the power or the damage output to back that up, they won't be scared and they won't walk you, period. Emil Morales clearly has that. I mean, 14 home runs at the age of 17. in 46 games. That is really impressive. It's really hard. I mean, it's hard to hit the ball over the fence with a wood bat when you're 17. There's a lot of players who don't even really homer in pro ball until they're older than 17. So that's awesome to see 14 home runs for him already. 194 WRC plus, Emil Morales of the Dodgers. This was his first professional season after he signed with the Dodgers last winter, and you can see from this past international amateur class, he earned $1.9 million. He was ranked 14th in that class according to MLB Pipeline. So one of the highest paid players within his class, so maybe not super under the radar. We were looking at another guy who, signed for $45,000. So there's a wide variety of outcomes and signing bonuses here. But Emil Morales, born in Spain, by the way, signed out of the Dominican Republic, but funnily enough, born in Spain, with the Dodgers, $1.9 million seems like a good signing so far, although of course a long way to go. Emil Morales is ranked 8th in a always strong Dodgers system, so 8th is, pretty high overall, but an ETA of 2029. That was the excellent age 17 season of Emil Morales, but, in the Dominican League, there are typically a few 16-year-olds who make their full professional debuts as well. That is an extremely impressive thing to do. 16 years old, and you're already a professional baseball player. Unbelievable. These are pitchers who threw at least 20 innings, sorted by age. You can see there were 8 16-year-olds or players in their age 16 seasons. And the most impressive of those 8 was a pitcher for the Padres by the name of Luis Maracara. Luis Maracara, as you can see, he's actually 17 right now. He turned 17 last month, but this was his age 16 season. A lot of things stand out to me here. I mean, the ground ball rate is good, but at the same time, I think hitters hit a lot of ground balls at that level anyways. But you know what plays is a 27% strikeout rate and an 8% walk rate. Like, that's nice. He had a 3.18 ERA, a 3.65 FIP. That's a nice job. The volume here is also somewhat impressive. I mean, he pitched in 11 games and he threw 45 innings. That means he was pitching a little over 4 innings per appearance. That doesn't sound like much, but that's actually probably a lot more than a lot of his peers at that level. I mean, a lot of guys, they just are throwing 1 or 2 innings per appearance at that level. You don't want to blow a guy's arm out necessarily at the age of 16. So not too much to say here, but it's an impressive season from someone who is, 16 for most of it. Luis Maracara of the San Diego Padres. Here are your top 30 Padres prospects. He is not on here, but if he was, what would it even say? Like ETA 2030? ETA 2030? That is just unbelievable to even think about. But, I tried to find his signing bonus. I couldn't find it necessarily, but I will point out that Leo Dallas de Vries was the, received, I think, the second highest signing bonus within last year's class. And then Humberto Cruz was maybe the number 1 pitcher as well. So these two, keep in mind it's a bonus pool, right? So these two are who they would have spent almost all of their money on, which would mean that the signing bonus for Luis Maracara must have been very little, if not, nothing practically. So a good find, at least based on the fact that he performed well in his age 16 season, which was his professional debut. That's also something with those Padres too. They start him young and they are really aggressive with their promotions. So, you got a guy like Ethan Salas, right? This is his age 18 season and he's in high A. That's a pretty, stellar example of how the Padres like to do things in terms of their minor league system. But yeah, I thank you guys for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for supporting Statline Scouting. And if you want to support me further, just go to patreon.com/foolishbaseball. Live a little, We've got work in progress updates. We've got exclusive content like video Q&As. These are like an hour and a half long, by the way. This is an hour and a half of me talking about baseball right here, and it happens, 6 times a year. I mean, there's dozens for you to look through by now. But also this month for September, I have posted a exclusive video that is looking back at past Statline Scouting. So I've done this for 4 years now, and I'm counting down the top 10 Statline Scouting alums who has succeeded, who has raised their prospect pedigree or their stock since I Statline Scouted them. So if you're a fan of this series, definitely join the Patreon. Definitely check that out. What you can do is you can actually pledge $5 a month, but a pledge is not a full-on promise because you will not be charged until the first of the month. So if you want to just pledge, see what's on there, see if you like it or not, and then decide whether to cancel or continue pledging, go for it. Patreon.com/foolishbaseball.